Okay, wanted to make a quick video here about some of the issues I've been running across recently with these really cheap aftermarket parts for these Husqvarna built mowers. Now Husqvarna made mowers under the Husqvarna, Paulin, Ariens, and Craftsman names, but they're pretty much all the same. So here we have some parts that are meant for a Husqvarna mower. This one was branded as Craftsman. So over here we have this super cheap aftermarket spindle assembly, and over here is what I believe to be an original Mandrel assembly. And I want to show you the differences between the way these parts are made. And I'm not trying to be an elitist and say you always got to go with OEM parts, but there's certain aftermarket parts that you specifically should avoid. So this Mandrel, you'll notice we've got, it's got some rust on it obviously, but the surface finish on the end here is pretty smooth. Now the big thing is this bolt. You notice it's kind of concave, dome shaped, and the whole purpose of that is that it clamps on the outside edge, maintains pressure on the blade, and clears this center section. It's very important that all of that is met so that your blade stays nice and tight and that it lasts a long time. So this is a good example of some of the really cheap cut rate aftermarket parts. You can find these on eBay or Amazon. Not all aftermarket parts will have these design features that I'm about to show you, but the really cheap ones tend to, and they cause a lot of problems. So the first is this finish on the end here. Now you see where the blade sits is pretty smooth, but then on the inside here you can see it's just really rough looking, not a very good casting. Now that in itself is not going to necessarily cause a problem, but I find it to be an indicator of the really cheap parts. But the big thing I tend to have a lot of issues with is this bolt setup. I don't think you're focused. Give me a second here. Come on, focus. There we go. So the big issue is this bolt setup. So you can see this is pretty much just a standard flat washer. They just kind of cut out a recess to clear this center bit here, and you see the recess is not even cut out centered. The big problem with this is, if you'll notice, this one's used and it's actually bent in the opposite direction, so it's not going to clamp down on the blade properly. And I've had a bunch of issues where this recess is simply not cut out enough. So what happens is you tighten this all the way down and it actually bottoms out on this spindle assembly rather than clamping down on the blade. So your blade is actually still loose even when this is tight. Obviously this design is no good. It doesn't hold up. You can swap the old bolt onto this spindle assembly if you need to make it work. But the other issue I've noticed with a couple of them recently is that the actual spindle assembly itself is simply not straight. I put it all together, I spin it, and I can watch the top and I can see the top moving in a circle because it's not perfectly straight. And in some cases I've even felt the bearings binding up at certain points because that spindle was not straight. And again, I'm not saying you have to go spend a premium on OEM parts, but if you spend literally just a couple dollars more, you can get an aftermarket part that doesn't have these design flaws and will be a better quality part. So that's my little tip for you today. Hope this helped you out.